For more than half a century, Clint Eastwood has stood as one of Hollywood's most enduring legends. The squint, the growl, the quiet authority, his screen presence is iconic, instantly recognizable to generations of moviegoers. From his early days as the rugged gunslinger in Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns to his later work as an Oscar-winning director, Eastwood has carved out one of the most remarkable careers in entertainment history. He is a man who has played cowboys, cops, soldiers, and outlaws. He has directed some of the most celebrated films of the modern era. He has defined masculinity on screen. And yet, behind the myth of Clint Eastwood, the movie star, lies Clint Eastwood the man, a man whose private life has often been as dramatic and complex as any of his films. For decades, his relationships, affairs, and marriages have filled tabloids and intrigued fans. Stories about Eastwood's love life have always lingered just out of reach, partly because of his refusal to comment, and partly because of the aura of mystery that has always surrounded him. But one rumor, above all others, persisted: the story of a secret daughter. For years, whispers floated through Hollywood that Eastwood had fathered a child out of wedlock, a daughter whose identity was unknown, whose life had unfolded in the shadows, away from the glitz of fame. The rumor seemed almost mythical, another tale added to the folklore of Clint Eastwood, half believed and half dismissed. Then, decades later, Eastwood confirmed it. The rumor was true. He did in fact have a secret daughter, and the story behind that revelation is one of the most extraordinary chapters in his already extraordinary life. The Many Loves of Clint Eastwood. To understand why the revelation of a secret daughter made such an impact, you have to understand Clint Eastwood's history with women. From the very start of his career, Eastwood was known not only for his acting talent, but also for his magnetic charm. He was tall, handsome, and carried himself with a confidence that few could resist. Eastwood married his first wife, Maggie Johnson, in 1953, years before he became a star. Their marriage lasted nearly 3 decades, but during that time, Eastwood's extramarital affairs were an open secret. He was linked to multiple women, often co-stars, sometimes even close friends of his wife. Hollywood insiders described him as charismatic, restless, and always surrounded by admirers. After his divorce from Johnson, Eastwood went on to have long-term relationships with actress Sandra Locke, flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves, and others. Over the years, he fathered 8 children with different women. His family tree was already complex before the rumor of a 9th child surfaced. Still, even with his reputation as a womanizer, the idea of a hidden daughter fascinated the public. Who was she? Where had she been? Why was she hidden? For years, the questions lingered unanswered. The birth of the secret. The story begins in the 1950s, long before Clint Eastwood became the household name he is today. As a young man in his early 20s, Eastwood was still years away from his big break. He was hustling, taking small roles, working his way through Hollywood's labyrinth. During this period, he had a brief romance with a young woman whose identity remained undisclosed for decades. Unbeknownst to Eastwood, that relationship resulted in the birth of a daughter. The woman, facing the realities of the time, chose to give the baby up for adoption. In the conservative culture of the 1950s, unwed motherhood carried stigma and shame. Adoption was seen as the best option, a way to give the child stability while allowing the mother to move forward with her life. The baby girl grew up without knowledge of her famous father. She was raised by her adoptive parents, far removed from Hollywood, far removed from the name Clint Eastwood. For Eastwood, the child disappeared into the folds of history. Whether he knew of her existence at the time remains unclear. Some accounts suggest he was told. Others suggest he was kept in the dark. What is certain is that for decades, the world never knew. The rumors begin. As Eastwood's fame exploded in the 1960s and 70s, so too did interest in his personal life. Tabloids chronicled his affairs and speculated about his growing family. It was during this time that whispers of a lost daughter began to circulate. But rumors in Hollywood are as common as palm trees, and most were dismissed as gossip. Eastwood himself never addressed the matter publicly. He was known for being private, even secretive, about his personal affairs. He gave interviews about his films, his directing process, his views on politics, but rarely, if ever, about his family. The rumor persisted nonetheless, carried along by curiosity and the sense that there was more to the Eastwood saga than anyone knew. The discovery. It wasn't until decades later that the secret daughter stepped into the light. Her name was revealed as Laurie Murray. Laurie had grown up with her adoptive family, unaware of her true parentage. As an adult, she began to dig into her background. Like many adoptees, she wanted to understand her roots, to know the story of where she came from. Her search led her to uncover the truth. Her biological father was Clint Eastwood. For most people, such a discovery would be shocking enough, but for Laurie, it was surreal. The man whose name was on her birth record was not just a father, but one of the most famous men in the world. Still, the story didn't end there. When Laurie finally made contact, Clint Eastwood did something unexpected. He welcomed her. Eastwood's reaction. Clint Eastwood has always been known as stoic, reserved, and sometimes even cold. His on-screen persona often mirrored his real-life demeanor, tough, unemotional, unyielding. But when faced with the reality of a daughter he had never known, Eastwood chose compassion. By all accounts, he did not deny her, did not reject her, and did not hide her. Instead, he embraced Laurie Murray as his daughter. He brought her into the Eastwood family, introduced her to her half-siblings, and gave her a place at the table. Those who know Eastwood say he was moved by her story, by the decades she had lived without knowing him, and by the courage it took to come forward. For a man who had spent much of his life avoiding public vulnerability, it was a rare and surprising act of openness. Laurie Murray. Laurie Murray, for her part, never sought fame or publicity. She grew up in the Pacific Northwest, living a quiet, private life. By the time she discovered her connection to Clint Eastwood, she was already married with children of her own. She had no interest in Hollywood glamour. Her approach to Eastwood was not about money or notoriety. It was about connection. She wanted to know her father, to understand where she came from, and to find a place in a family she had never known. Eastwood's other children reportedly accepted her warmly. The Eastwood family is large, complicated, and diverse, but Laurie became a part of it, attending family gatherings and building relationships with her half-siblings. The public revelation. For years, Eastwood and Murray kept their relationship private. It was only in 2018, at the premiere of Eastwood's film The Mule, that the world learned the truth. Clint Eastwood walked the red carpet with all 8 of his children, including Laurie. For fans and journalists, it was a revelation. The secret daughter was no longer a rumor. She was real, and Eastwood was acknowledging her publicly. Photographs of the Eastwood clan standing together, with Laurie among them, spread rapidly. Headlines proclaimed, "Clint Eastwood's secret daughter revealed." After decades of speculation, the truth was out. And Eastwood, true to form, offered no dramatic explanations. He didn't hold a press conference or write a memoir confession. He simply included her, letting the gesture speak louder than any words. Why it matters. The story of Clint Eastwood's secret daughter matters not because it adds scandal to his life, though tabloids certainly spun it that way, but because of what it reveals about him as a man. Eastwood has long been portrayed as the ultimate lone wolf, both on screen and off. His characters are solitary, uncompromising, and reluctant to connect. His personal life often mirrored that image: serial affairs, multiple partners, fractured relationships. And yet, in the case of Laurie Murray, Eastwood showed something different. He showed the capacity for acceptance, for humility, for love. He allowed himself to be vulnerable in a way that audiences had rarely seen. For Laurie, the confirmation was life-changing. For Eastwood, it was legacy-changing. At nearly 90 years old, he had added another chapter to his extraordinary life. One not defined by film reels or awards, but by family. The revelation of Clint Eastwood's secret daughter stunned the world, but for those closest to him, it was another reminder that the man behind the legend is far more complicated than the characters he plays. When Clint Eastwood stepped onto the red carpet at the premiere of The Mule in 2018, the cameras immediately turned to him. At that point, he was 88 years old, a living legend, one of the last giants of Hollywood's golden age, still working, still directing, still commanding audiences. But on that evening, what caught the world's attention wasn't just the man himself. It was the family by his side. 8 children surrounded Eastwood, smiling, chatting, proud to stand beside their father. And among them was a woman most fans had never seen before. Her name was Laurie Murray, the secret daughter, whose existence had been the subject of rumor for decades. By walking that carpet together, Eastwood confirmed it publicly. The whispers were true. He had a daughter the world had never known, and he was no longer hiding it. The moment was striking, not just because of the revelation, but because of what it said about Eastwood himself. A man who had spent his life cultivating the image of a tough, untouchable loner was, at nearly 90 years old, choosing connection. He was allowing the world to see his private life, to meet the daughter he had embraced quietly for years. It was a reminder that even legends evolve. Family dynamics. The Eastwood family has always been complex. Over the years, Clint fathered children with multiple women, some within long-term relationships and others outside of them. He has never pretended to live a conventional life, and his children grew up in a web of half-siblings and blended households. Yet, by most accounts, Eastwood has maintained close relationships with his children. Scott Eastwood, the actor who most resembles his father's younger self, has spoken openly about his admiration for Clint. Allison Eastwood has described him as supportive and loving. Francesca, Kimber, Kyle, Catherine all have appeared publicly with him at various times. Adding Laurie Murray into that mix could have been fraught. Families don't always welcome new revelations, particularly when they involve hidden histories. But remarkably, the Eastwood children accepted her. By the time the public saw her in 2018, Laurie had already been part of the family for years. She attended family gatherings, met her siblings, and built bonds that transcended the circumstances of her birth. The quiet acceptance speaks volumes about Eastwood's ability, late in life, to bring his complicated family together. Whatever mistakes he had made in his personal life, and they were many, he seemed determined to end his story, not with division, but with unity. Clint Eastwood's silence. What made the revelation so powerful was not a dramatic confession, but Clint Eastwood's silence. True to his character, he did not hold interviews to explain the story. He did not sit down for a tell-all with a journalist. He simply appeared with Laurie and let the world draw its conclusions. This restraint was quintessential Eastwood. Throughout his career, he has been a man of few words, both on screen and off. His characters rarely delivered long monologues. They relied on glances, gestures, and silences that spoke louder than dialogue. Eastwood the man has lived the same way. By refusing to sensationalize the story, he transformed what could have been tabloid fodder into something dignified. The message was clear. Laurie is my daughter. She is part of my family. That is enough. Laurie Murray's perspective. For Laurie Murray, the journey from secret to acceptance was deeply personal. Adopted as an infant in the 1950s, she grew up unaware of her famous parentage. Her childhood was quiet, far removed from the chaos of Hollywood. As an adult, her search for her biological parents eventually led her to Clint Eastwood. For many adoptees, the discovery of birth parents is complicated, filled with conflicting emotions. For Laurie, the complication was magnified by the fact that her father was not just anyone, but one of the most famous men in the world. And yet, Laurie never sought to exploit that connection. By all accounts, she is private, reserved, and uninterested in fame. Her approach to Eastwood was not about financial gain or publicity. It was about belonging. She wanted to know her father, to understand her history, and to connect with the family she had never known. In Eastwood, she found a man willing to welcome her. For a daughter who had grown up in the shadow of a mystery, the embrace must have been life-changing. The public reaction. When the story broke publicly, fans and media outlets erupted. Some treated it as a scandal, another twist in Clint Eastwood's already colorful personal life. Others saw it as a touching chapter, proof that even at nearly 90, a man could choose reconciliation and connection. The contrast between Eastwood's on-screen persona and his real-life vulnerability fascinated audiences. On screen, he was the ultimate lone wolf, a gunslinger who needed no one, a cop who answered only to himself, a man who walked alone. Off-screen, he was a father standing proudly beside 8 children, including the one the world had never known. For many, it humanized him. Legends can sometimes seem untouchable, larger than life. But here was Clint Eastwood confronting the same complexities of family, love, and acceptance that ordinary people face. Eastwood's legacy. Clint Eastwood's legacy is already assured. As an actor, he defined the modern Western and reimagined the American tough guy. As a director, he created films like Unforgiven, $1 Million Baby, and Gran Torino, works that explored themes of violence, redemption, and aging with nuance and power. He has won Academy Awards, critical acclaim, and the devotion of audiences worldwide. But legacy is not just about work. It is also about family relationships and the mark left on those closest to you. By acknowledging Laurie Murray, Eastwood added a new dimension to his legacy. He showed that even in his twilight years, he was capable of growth, capable of connection, capable of rewriting the narrative of his life. The story of Laurie does not diminish his legend, it enriches it. It reminds us that icons are human, that behind the myth of Clint Eastwood is a man who has made mistakes, faced consequences, and chosen in the end to embrace love over denial. The cultural fascination. Why did the revelation of Eastwood's secret daughter capture so much attention? Partly because Eastwood himself is a cultural symbol. Few actors have embodied American masculinity as completely as he has. His characters are solitary, hardened, unyielding. They are men who answer to no one, who reveal little, who never back down. To learn that such a man had a hidden chapter in his personal life and that he chose to acknowledge it publicly challenges that myth. It shows vulnerability, humility, and humanity. It reveals that even the toughest men are not immune to the pull of family, to the need for connection, to the desire for forgiveness. The fascination also speaks to our collective interest in secrets. We are drawn to hidden histories, to the idea that even the most famous lives have untold stories. Clint Eastwood's confirmation of the rumor tapped into that curiosity, offering a rare glimpse behind the curtain. The man at the end of the trail. Clint Eastwood is now in his 90s, an age when most men have long since stepped away from the spotlight. And yet even now, he remains active, directing films, making appearances, and shaping stories for a new generation. His life has been longer, fuller, and more extraordinary than most could ever imagine. For decades, he has been the face of American cinema. The gunslinger with the steely glare, the cop who bent the rules, the filmmaker who gave us intimate portraits of justice, morality, and redemption. His body of work stretches across genres and generations. He is not simply an actor or a director, he is an institution, a man whose very name carries the weight of history. But time spares no one, not even icons. At this stage of life, every new revelation about Eastwood feels less like gossip and more like a piece of the final chapter of a legend. When the news surfaced that he had embraced Laurie Murray, the secret daughter the world had speculated about for decades, it wasn't dismissed as another scandal in a long Hollywood career. It was something far deeper, part of his story, part of his reckoning. It served as a reminder that even legends must face the consequences of their choices. For all the tough guy roles, for all the characters who lived by their own code and answered to no one, Eastwood himself could not outrun the past. And yet, instead of denying it, he chose to confront it. Instead of turning away, he opened the door. By acknowledging Laurie, he showed that reconciliation is possible even in the twilight of life. In that simple act, Eastwood transformed a rumor into a story of healing. The man who so often played solitary figures on screen demonstrated that, in real life, family can expand rather than fracture, that secrets can be transformed into truth, that redemption is not just something written in scripts, it is something lived. For Eastwood, the confirmation of Laurie Murray's place in his life was more than personal, it was symbolic. It told the world that a man who had defined himself for so long as the lone rider was, in fact, capable of embracing connection, that beneath the myth of the unbreakable cowboy was a father, perhaps imperfect, but willing to grow. A different kind of ending. If Clint Eastwood were to write a script for his own life, the ending would not resemble the ones that defined his films. In his movies, endings are rarely tidy. They are often bittersweet, filled with loss, sacrifice, and quiet resignation. His heroes walk away alone, their work done, their burdens carried in silence. Conflicts are resolved through violence, and redemption, if it comes, always comes at a price. But in the reality of his later years, Eastwood seems to be crafting a different kind of ending, one that is gentler, more human, more communal. Instead of solitude, there is family. Instead of denial, there is acceptance. Instead of secrets, there is truth. The red carpet moment at the Mule premiere captured this perfectly. Clint Eastwood, the man who built a career on playing outsiders and loners, stood surrounded by his children, Laurie included. It was a tableau no screenwriter could have improved. The tough icon of American cinema transformed into the patriarch of a sprawling, complicated, but united family. In that moment, he was not the silent drifter or the hard-edged cop. He was a father. A man who, after decades of complicated relationships and unanswered questions, had chosen connection over isolation. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise of all. The truth about Clint Eastwood's secret daughter may have begun as a rumor, whispered and half believed. But the ending of that story is not scandal. It is not denial. It is a man in his 90s choosing honesty, healing, and love. In doing so, Eastwood has given us a final lesson, one that transcends Hollywood. No matter how far down the trail a man has traveled, no matter how many choices or mistakes he has made, it is never too late to seek reconciliation. It is never too late to choose family. It is never too late to change the ending. Clint Eastwood has spent his life playing men of mystery, men who reveal nothing, men who walk alone. But now, in his final act, he has revealed the truth about his secret daughter, and in doing so, has shown us a side of himself we never expected. What do you think? Does the revelation of Laurie Murray change the way we see Clint Eastwood, or does it simply remind us that even legends are human? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of Hollywood icons. You're watching Icon Legends, where the truth behind the legend is finally revealed.